Look at the highlights. Governor Kidero ahead of the park. Opinion survey on Nairobi gubernatorial race reveals. We are on course, President Uhuru Kenyatta says on the country's infrastructure. And a suspected thief eats grass after allegedly being bewitched in Kuria, Migori County. A very good afternoon to you. Now, well, it's exactly 1 year to the general election, and as the clock ticks, so does the thermometer of the political heat. And Kiambu Governor William Kabogo, along with Nairobi County Senator Mike Sonko, now say they will collaborate to help one another to retain their political might in 2017. Kabogo has declared his interest in retaining his seat, while Sonko seeks to replace Nairobi County Governor Evans Kidero. The two spoke at a meeting held at Gitothwa Secondary School intended to launch Kabogo's re-election bid.
Mheshimiwa Kabogo, tukae na vijana wako wa Kiambu. Mimi niko tayari kuja hapa kusaidiana na wewe. Usipigane na vijana na kina mama. Hizo ndio kura zetu. Mahali kuna makosa kidogo turekebishe, tupeleke Kiambu mbele, Nairobi mbele, tukutane huko mbele.
Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Sonko, sisi tungependa upeleke ujumbe wa watu wa Kiambu kwa watu ya Nairobi. Katiba inaruhusu watu kufanya uchaguzi kila miaka 5, na ni watu wa kaunti ya Nairobi watachagua watu ya Nairobi. Hapa watu ya Kiambu ndio watachagua gava Kabogo.
And it was one of those rare moments when Jubilee and CORD leaders find themselves on the same podium. While ODM Acting Secretary General led the CORD team, while Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen led the Jubilee Brigade. They were speaking during a fundraiser at Lel Boynet High School in Keyo South. Take a look.
Tangula, ule mtu anaitwa Kalonzo, mujenge also nyumba moja, ndio sisi tusione nyinyi mnapitisha karata kutoka hapa na pale, ili Kenya ikuwe inashindana kwa issues. Namwambia mzee kitu moja, mimi ninashukuru. Gazeti leo Standard imesema Raila Odinga is ready to support another person to be president. Tell him I have said congratulations mzee. Na watu wa Kenya wamepigia yeye makofi. It is good that finally you have realized time has come. Wachia another generation. Na asitafute mtu ya kusupport, mtu ya kuendorse ni Uhuru Kenyatta.
Sisi tumejipanga na wale wameshajipanga. Wacha niwaambie CORD, sisi pia tumejipanga. Tumejipanga na hatutaki kupangwa na hatutapangwa. Wenyewe tumejipanga, wakati ukifika we will look for the best. Na matamshi ya party leader, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga leo, is that the best candidate is the one who is going to hold the flag.
Ikifika election next year, nyinyi wenyewe ndio mtaamua. Jubilee wafanye campaign, CORD wafanye campaign yao, na wananchi ndio watachagua kiongozi ambaye ataongoza nchi.
All right, from Elgeyo Marakwet, let's come back into the city. The second edition of the A-series of State House Summit was held this morning, focusing on transport and infrastructure. Stakeholders, including the government, investors and citizens, were given the opportunity to challenge the state of the roads in the country.
The only way we can know whether we're doing right or wrong is through an engagement such as this. I've been watching for the good part of the morning the engagement that you've had with the minister and his PSs and senior officials, and I think it's positive, and I encourage it. I encourage it because it tells us where we're going right. It also tells us where we're going wrong, but it also tells us where we need to do more. And so through this kind of engagement, I believe we can make good progress. I just want to make a couple of points with regard to infrastructure, because the biggest problem about infrastructure is that it is expensive. It costs a lot of money. And given the fact that it costs a lot of money, it attracts a lot of attention. And thereby, we, or those who are charged with the responsibility of building infrastructure, have a probably greater onus than most in terms of accountability. And we need to discuss and to deliberate as to how best we handle this issue of infrastructure. Because the fact cannot be lost on us, whether we like it or not. Infrastructure is a necessity if our economy is to grow and if we are to achieve the prosperity we desire as a people and as a nation. So we can't run away from it. And there was one question, I heard being raised, and I'd like us to deal with from the very onset. A question that was raised here, I heard it, I think I was watching on TV, and I heard, I don't know whether it was you who raised, or Jeff, one of you raised a question as to an article on The Economist that we are doing this SGR, and the Economist stating that this was uneconomical. I want to pose a question. Less than about 20, 30 years ago, and we have always stated this, Kenya was probably on the same growth trajectory as what was then, because they are no longer, growing tigers. The Asian tigers, who are now full-grown tigers. They are not growing anymore, they are full-grown and challenging the world for that matter. And I remember a similar situation where they were challenged and being told that they were investing in infrastructure. Same World Bank saying this is unnecessary, this is just expensive, this is not necessary, this is not required. I just want to pose a question to those who challenge us when we, as a country, as a continent, are investing in infrastructure.
All right, let's now get into matters of education. Primary school heads are meeting in Mombasa to deliberate on issues touching on basic education. The conference has kicked off today and will run the whole week. Our reporter Moses Bayer is with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development Director, Dr. Julius Juan, and now joins us live from Mombasa, where the conference is taking place. Many thanks for joining us, Moses. And kindly just tell us what are some of the key highlights of this particular event, as of course you speak to the director of the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Over to you, Moses.
Thank you, Akisa. Now I'll just take you straight to the director who will give you some of the highlights of the key reforms they will be undertaking. Mr. Julius, just come in. Maybe just tell Kenyans the reforms that are in your bag.
Thank you very much for having me on air. I think first of all, allow me to thank the CAPTCHA team for having thought very wisely about the theme of the conference for this year, which is on curriculum reform for quality education. Basically, what we are doing in the curriculum reform is to bring to the fore issues that have not been raised for the last 13 years, because we have never reviewed our curriculum for the last 13 years. UNESCO requires that we do this after every 5 years. Now, one of the key issues is that since we revised our curriculum last, we have since had a new constitution, which has come with several factors that need to be embedded within our curriculum. We have Vision 2030, that is the economic blueprint for our growth as a country. If you look at the social pillar, economic pillar, and the political pillar, they all require an education system that addresses some of the factors that can propel us to the next stage.
Maybe can you tell us some of the key areas you will be addressing in the reforms?
Some of the key areas we'll be addressing in the reforms is reducing the content, the amount of content that children learn in primary school. I think we bog our children too much with academic work and we forget that they need to remain children. Two, we are moving into a competence-based curriculum where we'll be focusing more on what somebody can do than what somebody can recall. And three, we propose that we reduce the number of years that children spend in primary school, because in primary school we basically need foundational skills of literacy, numeracy, and life skills. And if that happens, then it means we can increase the transition that we have from primary school to junior secondary to 100%, so that no child is told they have failed at that level, because really at that level a child is not supposed to fail. We are supposed to identify their potential. Another thing we are going to do is we are going to introduce pathways in senior school. After children have gone through junior secondary and we have identified their potential, then each child should go into a pathway at senior school that they are interested in. If somebody wants to go in for sports, they'll have what we call core courses, for example, citizenship and identity, entrepreneurship skills, communication skills, but they still go on to specialize in the sports that they are interested in, and in the process expanding the broad and the base, expanding learning for all the learners. The other pathway that we shall have is on vocational and technical training, so that we bring back children the days when children would go and do woodwork, metal work, because that might be their interest. In a sense, therefore, we'll be expanding the learning area for children in this country.
Now, we've seen that whenever reforms are coming or whenever there are changes, you expect some resistance. Maybe what have you done to ensure that your programs will run smoothly?
I think one thing we have done, in my view, which we have done pretty well, is stakeholder engagement. The last 1 year, actually over 1 year, we have been engaging various stakeholders and getting their views on what they think we should do in this curriculum. That includes teachers, that includes the unions, that includes parents, civil society, religious groups, parliamentarians, that is politicians, and at each level we get input on what we need to do. Don't forget we conducted a needs assessment in the whole country, and therefore the reform that we are undertaking is informed by what we got from the Kenyans. But to answer your question, the stakeholder engagement in this has been extremely high.
Okay, maybe the last question. Tell us about the issue of ranking, because there has been an uproar of ranking. What is it?
I already raised my personal views about ranking when I was making my presentation. I think ranking was recently passed by Parliament. As KICD in the new curriculum, will not be ranking children against one another. We'll be looking at the potential of each child and the level of attainment of learning that they're supposed to achieve at each level, at each grade. And therefore, instead of looking at ranking children against one another, we'll be looking at how they perform in relation to a specific standard. So I think as soon as we introduce the new curriculum, we'll not be discussing ranking anymore. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Julius. Back to you, Wandera.
All right, thank you very much for that. That is our correspondent live from Mombasa, Moses Bayer, speaking to Dr. Julius Dwan, who is the director of the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, as they are on day one of the Kenya Primary School Head Teachers Conference in Mombasa, focusing on basic education. And as that happens in Mombasa, here in Nairobi, Education Principal Secretary Dr. Belia Kipsang has presided over the launch of a report on inculcating values in the education sector. The report, compiled by women education researchers, seeks to introduce values in the education system away from the usual mean grade. Our reporter Mark Namaswa now joins us for details on this story. Good afternoon, Mark. Many thanks for joining us. Something comes out of this particular report or this particular story, and that is the issue of the mean score. What exactly comes out when it comes to the mean score? for from this particular research?
Thank you very much. Part of the report reads that or states that the overemphasis on mean scores and mean grades has continued to cause an erosion in the value systems in Kenya. And part of the study says that out of all the subjects that are taught, only religious education related subjects are the only ones that contribute to about 50% of the values that are expected to be inculcated in the learners. And it was found out that the culture of impunity, the culture of corruption, the lack of equality in our society is partly to blame on the education system that overemphasizes on the emphasis on the means that justified, the end justifying the means. And it was found out that out of the 1,300 respondents that were asked or that were polled in the survey, it is that the children that are taught in our schools in Kenya tend to bend their attention mostly on acquiring marks at the expense of values in the society. And our education system was also found to be deficient in the practical aspects, in that students come out of school when they have very great grades, but when it comes to values such as integrity, patience, tolerance, and equality, they are very deficient. And Kenya was also found to be quite good when it comes to the levels of literacy. In fact, in Africa, Kenya is number 4. But when it comes to the overall global ranking, Kenya does not rate amongst the best, because most of our students are only good when it comes to the theory, but not good when it comes to the practical elements that also include cultivating value systems among the learners.
What are some of the recommendations that are being made there by the researchers? From, of course, what we see that Kenyans are very good with the theory, but not the practicals. How do we seek to reverse this particular notion?
Part of the recommendations state that our education system should try to veer away from the overemphasis in acquiring great grades, and that we should focus more in inculcating values amongst the students. For instance, Kenya was compared to other countries like Finland that are rated amongst the best education systems in the world, in which students basically start school at about the age of 7 and go on for another 6 years without having done any exam. And that was cited as one of the reasons why students from, let's say, countries like Finland, Hong Kong, or China and Singapore are able to excel in the practical aspects when compared to their Kenyan counterparts, who are over-competitive when it comes to acquiring grades. But when it comes to matters of the practical aspects of life, they are not faring well at all. And it was also recommended that parents should be included in the inculcation of the value systems amongst students, yes, so that as we grow up and as our society continues to grow, we are able to have a society that is all-rounded.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark, for that. Mark Namaswa is joining us live from the City Center with insights from that particular report launched. And what comes out of it is that probably we need to come out of the culture of mean scores and mean grades and the theory, and of course take a look at the practicals. Thank you very much, Mark, for that. But at this point, we will take a short break here on Newsdesk. Do not go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you, international news, and of course, a dose of your sports news. Do not go too far. Welcome back. You are watching KTN Newsdesk. And now results of a research are currently being released on the preferred candidates in Nairobi, Kiambu and Machakos counties. These are candidates for the gubernatorial seats, senators and women representatives. The research was done by Tifa Research Limited.
question you normally ask the respondents is, which political party do you feel closest to? Now, what we've done is that we've put the names of the parties as they mentioned them. And then at the top where you're seeing a box, we've actually combined the parties that are affiliated to CORD, those that are affiliated to Jubilee, and you can see the combination. Because at the end of the day, the respondents give the response as per how they understand the political parties. So we can see from our study, the CORD coalition parties have, or the CORD coalition has a 38% support, and Jubilee coalition 38%. So you can actually say that Nairobi is very competitive because the support levels for the two big parties or the coalitions is actually equal. We haven't done the scenario testing, and I'm hoping, and let's see moving forward, if somebody else comes out strongly running under any of the CORD parties, we will do the scenario testing. In fact, this study gives us a fantastic baseline, because moving forward, and I'd like to take a more competitive area like Nairobi, we'll ask people, if elections are to be held today, who would you vote for? And you can see already the top two candidates is Kidero and Sonko. Then we'll have a part B of the question and say, assuming that there were no other candidates, and you had Sonko and Kidero, and these are their parties, who do you vote for? If we had a third horse, we can actually have the person and the party, person and the party, person and the party, and then you force residents to say, assuming that these were the only choices, who do you vote for? So moving forward, expect that kind of information from us, because now the scenarios will begin to unfold.
Now, the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry is urging women to take up government tenders to empower themselves. The body says that 9.8 billion Kenya shillings is on offer this year alone through the Women Enterprise Fund and Youth Empowerment. Zinze Kibiku with that story.
The Kenya National Chambers of Commerce and Industry is encouraging women to utilize the government's 30% tender and procurement provisions for women, youths and persons with disability to empower themselves. According to KNCCI Director of Gender Affairs and the National Chair of Women in Business, Mary Muthoni Jason, lack of awareness and cultural barriers are factors that hinder women from taking up government tenders and procurement.
The next few months, we will go around the country and sensitize more and more women to come out, because we find a bit of technicality which most of the women are not aware of, and especially in documentation. You find a list of about 17 documents that you need to raise so that you can tender or procure. So really, we need to go down to the counties and enlighten the women, create awareness on what is required before you even think of procuring.
We are also involving the government. We are also talking with the government, the PPUA especially, so that we know what companies and what government departments have ensured that the 30% has been given to the women. We are doing a data to know how many women have so far accessed the 30%.
One of the challenges that has hindered access to the fund is the tedious tendering procedures. The process involved include documentation, pre-qualifications, paperwork, financial proposals, bank credits, to mention a few.
I would like to tell the women not to give up. You have to keep on trying. Try to get as much information as possible. Try to learn as much as possible about the tenders. Try to walk into the offices and ask for those tenders, because they are there. But unless we get aggressive on this, unless we get aggressive in getting that information, knocking doors, saying what our problems are, we will not be able to get help.
I'm looking at the case of the young girl, Mwende, who's got no hands right now. Really, if the family unit can stick together and support one another, that is one component that can really help our businesses to move up to another level.
Mary Muthoni says it is high time that women overcame these challenges.
Look at the SMEs that we have in the country now. About 70% of what we access, we roll out every year. 50% could be women and the youth. But hardly will you find the businesses of this cadre succeeding at the third year or fourth year, you'll find that the businesses are collapsed. You know, why? Lack of skills, lack of support, you know. And these are issues that we are really ready to tackle as women in business at the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce.
What was back in 2012 at 10% of government contracts to youth and women now stands at 30%. Muthoni says that they will be addressing policy issues in the coming weeks. Zinzi Kibiku, KTN News.
All right, let's now get into sports. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, winner, ensured that Jose Mourinho's reign at Manchester United got off to a winning start as the FA Cup holders beat champions Leicester City 2-1 in England's Community Shield season curtain raiser at Wembley Stadium. Jamie Vardy had earlier equalised following Jesse Lingard's superb solo opener in the 31st minute.